awakened, surrounded by the dry smell of hot stone and settled dust. The heat of the sun outside was barely noticeable here in the shadows. The silence was absolute, a weight gripping your ears, as if the air itself had stopped. Your fingers brushed the rough surface of the carved walls, filled with forgotten secrets. The cold limestone floor pressed under your soles, stiff and unyielding. Exiting was no simple task. Every step would echo like a shout in the void, and the maze of narrow corridors around you seemed endless. The hours passed, marked only by your slow, steady breathing. Time dragged on, moving like the repetitive motion of your hands adjusting the torch that barely cast enough light to push back the shadows. The silent fear grew, fed by the absence of any human sound. The torturous wait for the fatal hour ahead weighed on you as you struggled to keep calm in this unchanging, dead space where even the smallest noise might announce your doom. The silence inside the Sphinx complex felt different, heavier than mere emptiness. Your fingers slid over the grainy stone, tracing ancient glyphs worn smooth by centuries. The faint echoes of your contained footsteps bounced hesitantly from alcove to alcove, swallowed quickly by the vast stillness. Dust mingled with the faint warmth of the walls, a stale taste caught in the air. The torchlight flickered endlessly, painting golden streaks over the ochre hues that faded like dying embers. If today's Wi-Fi outage already makes you grumble, imagine being trapped here with total silence, no signal, not even a whisper. Your hand returned to the torch's handle, twisting the wick again and again, the tiny flame humming its faint heat against your cheek. The ritual of lighting and relighting soothed you briefly. The warmth was a sharp contrast to the pervasive cold weight of the stones. You moved deliberately, step by cautious step, your shoes pressing softly against the hard floor, careful to muffle any stray sound. You reached an old wooden door, its iron lock rusted shut. Slowly, you slid your hand over the cold metal, feeling the rough texture and the faint chill of neglect. Fingers fiddled with the mechanism, turning left and then right, over and over, confirming it remained securely fastened. You stepped back. The slight clink echoed like thunder in the vast silence. Hesitation crept in. Was that shadow moving? There, just beyond your torchlight, a flicker stirred. You squinted, heart tightening as the dark seemed to breathe. A single faint noise drifted in the distance. A whisper of sound, barely audible, yet enough to shatter the fragile calm. Hey, before Morpheus finally catches you, take a quick look to see if you're still subscribed. For some, the button vanished, and I don't want you to miss the next sleep stories. Go ahead and leave a like, soft as a pillow. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Your interaction keeps this little calm corner alive. Thanks for being part of this. You stepped back from the heavy wooden door, your breath catching in the sudden stillness that swallowed the faint clink like a shout into an empty well. The shadow flickered again, just beyond your wavering torchlight, subtle as a curtain stirred by a ghost breeze. You felt the cold metal's kiss linger at your fingertips. The corroded lock, a remnant of ages forgotten, stubborn against your restless touch. The silence waited, patient and suffocating, wrapping around your senses like a thick, invisible fog. You shifted your weight, the limestone floor unforgiving beneath your soul, its cool hardness grounding you in the oppressive quiet. Your steps echoed softly as you moved away, each one a slow drumbeat in the vast void of the chamber. Dust stirred faintly with your motion, particles catching the torch's amber glow, momentarily glittering like scattered stars. The heat from the flickering flame pressed gently against your cheek, a sour contrast to the dry coolness of the walls and floor. You could feel the faint pulse of ancient stone beneath your hands, ridged, carved, whispering secrets as old as time. Every groove held a memory you couldn't read but sensed flowing beneath your skin. You paused, the nervous tension coiling tight in your chest, breathing steady like a metronome, counting the passing moments. The torchlight stretched across the corridor, swallowing shadows whole, but revealing nothing new. Still, beneath that curtain of darkness, you could swear that waiting breath lingered, a quiet presence looming just out of reach. Your fingers brushed over the rough stone again, dredging up the indistinct shapes the passing centuries had smoothed almost to invisibility. The faint, acrid scent of settled dust and the distant, dry smell of the desert beyond seemed to mingle in the still air here, trapped and unmoving. The silence wasn't just an absence of sound. It was a creature itself, crawling beneath your skin and weighing on your nerves. Slowly you began to walk, each movement deliberate and precise. The echo of your passing footsteps was a reminder of your isolation and how dangerous it was to summon any noise louder than a breath. Your shoes pressed softly, yet firmly, to the unyielding floor, careful not to disrupt the careful balance of shadow and light. Your hands clutched the torch's handle, the flame wavering beneath the faintest flicker of unseen currents, casting gold across faded ochres and the cracked surfaces of ancient reliefs. You could feel the cold air brushing past your skin where the walls opened into narrow alcoves, shadows pooling like dark water in their depths. A gentle whisper of wind, so slight it might have been your imagination, stirred a loose scarf forgotten on a worn stone ledge. You swallowed, as if the tiny motion had disturbed something. Waiting just beyond the edge of sight, the torch flame shuddered, and you blinked against the sudden dimming. A soft scrape echoed, so faint it was barely a sound, but enough to fasten your attention like a hook. Turning slowly, your eyes searched the blackened corners for any sign of movement, your heartbeat shifting to a steady, slow drum. One breath at a time, your body fought against the rising tide of dread, grounding you more in the iciest parts of the limestone walls. You reached out, fingertips tracing the cool curves of a faded glyph carved deep into the stone. The surface was gritty and cracked, worn by centuries of time and neglect. Your skin remembered the sensation like a faint pulse, raised edges under your touch, the strange softness where time had sanded down the hard angles. With every deliberate pass, your fingertips imagined stories whispered long ago, but forever held captive within the silent stone. Time lost meaning in the stifling gloom. Your breathing measured your presence, slow and steady, like a pendulum swinging through a vast abyss. With each inhale, the stale, earthen air filled your lungs. With each exhale, you pushed the anxiety down to a manageable ember. You adjusted your grip on the torch, twisting its wick again, coaxing the tantrums of the small flame to steady brightness. The faint heat brushing your palm, a fragile anchor in the cold, heavy quiet. Further down the corridor, your attention was caught by a faint pattern of light, a slight flicker, more star than flame, dancing shyly along the opposite wall. Moving toward it, your steps faltered as the sensation of being watched brushed your skin like a whisper. The dark held its breath, and you held yours in return. Your eyes caught the silhouette of another door, a battered iron ring hung loosely from a broken latch, the wood scarred and swollen. Fingers grazing the rusty cold with care, you discovered that the latch could be gently nudged aside with thoughtful patience. Every fraction of movement was agonizingly slow, as if the heavy air resisted your progress. The dusty smell of old wood, mingled with the faint metallic tang of rust, lingered long after your hand pulled the latch open. As the door creaked open, a thin, damp breeze slipped out, carrying the scent of something ancient and untouched. Earth turned to stone by time, and secrets better left unspoken. You stepped inside, the torchlight struggling to illuminate the cramped space beyond. Cold stone walls loomed close, bathed in the thick stillness that felt alive, breathing softly and watching. Your senses sharpened with every slow, careful step. The faint scrape of your shoe on loose gravel was a loud crack in the quiet room. The air tasted faintly of something mineral and slightly sweet. Dust motes danced lazily in the thin rays filtering through cracks above. A low rhythmic pulse seemed to beat from the stones themselves, the echo of some deep, dormant heart running beneath your feet. You turned toward the far end of the chamber, where darkness pooled in heavy shadows. Something just beyond the reach of your light stirred, not with sound, but the heavy movement of presence, invisible but vast. You swallowed the tight knot rising in your throat, feeling every hair stand at attention. Just as you fixed your gaze on that empty darkness, the torch flickered, wildly as a faint breath of air snuffed the flame, sudden, silent, and complete. The world fell away into utter blackness. And then, from the depths, a slow, measured exhale echoed, soft, chilling, and close enough to brush your ear. The darkness closed around you like a deep, suffocating ocean, each breath measured and slow as the blackness swallowed the flicker of your torch. Your fingers brushed over the empty space where flame once danced, searching for warmth that was no longer there. For a long moment, nothing stirred but the weight of silence, absolute, pressing like the heavy stones overhead. You swallowed the rising chill that curled deep inside your lungs, steadying the uneven rhythm of your breath. Gradually, you reached out, fingertips grazing the rough wall to your left. The limestone still felt faintly warm from hours of trapped sun, its grainy texture pressing against your skin like a stubborn memory refusing to fade. The smell of ancient earth drifted faintly, mingled with the crispness of cool air sliding through narrow cracks you hadn't noticed before. The room felt alive in its stillness, the cold surfaces humming softly beneath your touch, a muted heartbeat in the cavernous dark. A slow inhale filled your lungs with the stale air, and you focused on the sound of your own breathing, precise, deliberate, a small ember flickering in the silence. The torch was gone, but the ritual of lighting and reigniting hovered in your memory, like a pale ghost, comforting in its absence. Your fingers brushed the handle of your belt, tracing the edges of a small, cold metal fragment, a shard of forgotten history, heavy with meaning you could only guess. The rough surface was slick beneath your thumb, worn smooth by countless touches in the past. Step by step, you shifted forward cautiously, the rough stone biting gently at the soles of your shoes, as memories of the lock and the rusted latch still echoed faintly behind you. The humidity shifted, a subtle change that rippled along your skin as cooler, damp air met your warmth. Somewhere deep beyond the black, you caught the faintest scrape, like the hesitant sigh of something ancient waking from a long sleep. You paused, breath shallow, heart folding into a slow, steady drum beneath ribs that ached with tension. Your fingers found a raised carving in the wall, a twisting knot of lines, almost erased from the passage of time, but still dignified in their silent presence. The subtle ridges pressed into your skin, a tactile whisper of a language long lost. You circled the pattern with meticulous care, tracing every curve and angle as if coaxing secrets from the stone. The cool surface was cracked and dusty, but there was a softness beneath, the promise of stories buried deep beneath the worn edges. A faint breeze crept across your neck, barely a whisper. Your shoulders tightened against it, muscles coiling in cautious anticipation. The corridor ahead remained cloaked in thick shadow, but where your torch had been, you now saw pale outlines of carved reliefs, blurred but magnificent. Figures frozen in time, guardians standing silent watch over forgotten dreams. Your gaze caught the faint gleam of something metallic down a narrow passage, a sliver of light bouncing off a distant surface, thin and fragile as a thread of silver. You moved toward it, every step measured to avoid disturbing the fragile stillness. The ground beneath felt uneven, pebble and grit crunching softly underfoot, a noise swallowed quickly by the vast emptiness. The air grew cooler, dampness clinging to stone walls that seemed to close in tighter with every passing pace. Your chest tightened, the shadows broadening like slow-moving water pooling around your feet. The silence grew heavier, but you pushed past the weight, your breath, a steady metronome, counting quiet moments. At the passage's end, another door loomed, ancient wood, swollen and scarred, the iron brace warped but holding firm. The faint rivulets of rust caught the pale light, each flake an echo of forgotten rains and long silent nights. Your fingers brushed the latch gently, surprised that it moved with soft protest rather than stubborn resistance. You nudged it open, the hinges sighing like a tentative memories stirred. Inside, cold air washed over you, carrying the scent of earth and stone baked dry by centuries. It clung to your skin like a damp veil, mingling with the faint metallic tang of something old and buried. The cramped chamber held no light but for the dim glow filtering through cracks in the ceiling, and dust hung thickly, clinging to the stillness like frozen breath. Your footsteps shifted tentatively across the loose gravel scattered on the floor, the sharp grains crunching beneath your soles. From the shadows, shapes seemed to emerge and recede, the walls themselves alive with textures and stories hidden beneath layers of decay. Your hands reached outward, fingertips grazing cool, jagged edges of fractured statues and rough-hewn blocks. The air felt charged, as if the space below the surface pulsed with a slow, ancient rhythm. You could almost hear a deep, resonant murmur vibrating through bone and stone alike. You paused near the chamber's far wall, hands pressed lightly against the cool surface. Here, the carvings were deeper, more deliberate, an intricate tapestry of symbols that twisted and curled like living vines. Your skin absorbed the coarse relief, each bump and crevice a whisper from an age long vanished, but still watching. The dim light flickered softly, shadows twisting as your breath echoed faintly around you. Then, beneath the murmur of silence, a new sound began. A faint scratching, distant yet deliberate, like a slow clawing at stone. Your heart slowed its beat, muscles tensing as the noise repeated, subtle, persistent. The air grew colder still, a frigid whisper sliding across. Your skin, carrying a presence that seemed just at the edge of feeling, close enough to touch, yet just beyond reach. The shadows shifted, and you instinctively turned, every sense stretched taut like a wire. But there was nothing visible, only the thick darkness swallowing the edges of your vision. Your body remained frozen, breath caught in a fragile stillness, poised between the calm and the storm. A low exhale drifted toward you, slow and measured, brushing past your ear like a promise or a warning. And just as your pulse began to steady, the faint glow returned, not from your torch, but from deep within the chamber's heart. A single ember, glowing faintly, pulsing with a soft and steady light. It hovered, suspended in the air, almost beckoning you. Before you could reach for it, the shadows behind you stirred once more, a movement barely perceptible, yet undeniable. Something was there, something waiting just beyond the pale flame's fragile glow, watching. You swallowed hard, every nerve alight, as the silent breath whispered again, colder now, hanging close, too close, and then, with a slow, deliberate chill, the chamber seemed to exhale once more, the darkness closing in around you, sealing the next secret in its endless, quiet tomb. The ember's glow hovered softly before you, a fragile pulse against the expansive black. You reached out slowly, your fingers trembling just slightly at the chill in the heavy air. The faint warmth of that tiny light was a whisper in the vast coldness surrounding you, inviting yet elusive. Time seemed to narrow to this single breath, the slow rhythm of your inhales and exhales, marking the fragile boundary between solidity and void. Behind you, shadows folded into themselves, silent and patient. A delicate scrape echoed again, faint, like thin nails tracing the surface of stone, pulling your senses taut. Each step you took forward was measured. The gravel beneath your soles crunched hesitantly, dissolving quickly into the cavern's immense silence. Your hands brushed the jagged edges of broken reliefs, cold and unyielding. Fragile with age, yet resistant against the slow creep of decay. The air tasted dry and ancient, mingled with a faint hum of damp earth. You imagined those walls, holding stories too old to speak aloud, waiting quietly for a voice to coax them from the depths. The faint light before you pulsed with a subtle heartbeat, syncing with the deep, slow drum of your own nerves. You felt yourself drawn toward it, each movement deliberate, as if the chamber itself watched you take every measured step. The cool air wrapped around your neck like a thin veil, shifting and whispering gently, carrying with it the scent of dust and something faintly metallic, an echo of rust or long-buried secrets. Shadows flickered in the periphery of your vision, shapes twisting slowly, but never fully taking form. You held your breath, the fragile warmth of the ember, fragile against the weight of darkness pressing in from all sides. Reaching out, your fingertips brushed the air just beneath the tiny glow. The soft heat wavered underneath, pulsing like a distant heartbeat you could almost feel through your skin. The dim outlines of faded carvings, edged in the gloom, seemed to lean closer, whispering promises that you were only beginning to understand. Of meaning, folded inside intricate patterns, coils, and spirals that repeated endlessly, like an ancient language written in stone. The silence around you wasn't empty. It vibrated gently, alive with quiet intentions that trailed just beyond your grasp. A low rustle stirred from the far corner, like a breath barely displaced. Your heart tightened in response, each beat slow and methodical, as if synchronized with the faint scratching that traced the stone. Seemed to pulse with hidden life. You stepped lightly forward, breath measured and slow, each foot pressing softly against the rough floor. Your fingers trailed over the cold stones, combined smoothness and rough textures, telling stories through tactile memory. A faint sensation pricked at your skin, the trace of something ancient and vast, wrapped in patient silence. The coolness of the stone was like the slow exhale of the earth itself, vast and unchanging beneath layers of dust and time. As you leaned in, the faint glow flickered once more, gathering before your eyes like a fragile thought. The light stretched thin fingers outward, revealing the faint silhouettes of carved faces, guardians long sealed in their silent watch, their features blurred by centuries, yet still watching, waiting. The air thickened, heavy with expectation, a stillness pressing in that was oath, reverent, and alive. Your breath was a soft echo, barely stirring the timeless dust. Then, from the shifting darkness, a slow, rasping exhale whispered close, like the soft sigh of stones settling, or the cold breath of something waking beneath the depths. Your skin prickled with the sensation, a presence brushing close enough to feel, yet intangible. You stepped back, slow and silent, each movement absorbing the weight of watching shadows gathering inside. The ember pulsed once again, now brighter and steadier, and just as you reached toward it, you felt a subtle change, a shift in the very air around you. The temperature dipped, a creeping chill threading through your bones. Shadows deepened suddenly, pooling thicker, swallowing light reluctantly, as if the chamber inhaled, drawing the fragile glow inward with it. The quiet breath you had felt pressed against your ear again, colder now, a slow, deliberate murmur carrying the weight of secrets unspoken. Your gaze snapped to the rear of the chamber, where darkness blended with stone. There, faint lines appeared like cracks on an ancient canvas, glowing threads weaving slowly through the wall itself, pulsing softly in rhythm with the ember. They curled and twisted, forming patterns unexpected, runes and symbols you had not noticed before, alive with the glow of some eldritch energy beneath the dust. You felt a trembling surge of awe, tangled with hesitation. The chamber no longer held simple silence, but a whispering force breathing beneath its surface, a riddle waiting to unfold, or a warning about what might awaken should you press further. Every instinct screamed for stillness, yet your fingers longed to trace those glowing lines. 2. Follow the pulse of mysterious light deeper into the unseen. You swallowed the sudden lump in your throat, breath caught sharp and delicate as frost against your lips, and froze, poised in the weighty silence before the unknown stirred once more. The chamber's breath settled, holding you in its close grip, a stillness that was both promise and threat, the next secret waiting just beyond the veil of shadow, whispering your name in the language of stone and silence. The ember's faint pulse lingered before you, casting a fragile glow that barely cut through the heavy shadows. Your fingers hesitated in the stillness, hovering, as if touching it would shatter the delicate balance between light and dark. The air was cool and dense, filled with the scent of dry earth and rusted metal, an ancient breath lingering in the space, like a secret. Your breath was shallow, each exhale a quiet ripple in the cavernous stillness, and you felt the weight of silence pressing in from all sides. You stepped forward slowly, each footfall an intimate conversation with the limestone floor. The uneven gravel underfoot whispered softly with every careful move, a delicate crunch that vanished almost before it registered. Your hands reached out, fingertips brushing against fractured stone edges, jagged yet weathered, cold and rough beneath your touch. There was a steady patience to the chamber's quiet pulse, as though it waited for you to remember something long forgotten, a rhythm beneath time and dust. The ember glowed a little brighter as you drew near, its light spilling gentle curves over faded carvings. The faces of ancient guardians emerged faintly, silent watchers carved in stone, their features softened by centuries, but still bearing the weight of vigil. The air felt charged, heavy with unspoken words, and your skin prickled with the sensation of eyes unseen, watching from just beyond the fragile illumination. Your breath stirred the dust, sending lazy specks swirling upwards like slow-moving fireflies. You reached out, thumb nearly brushing the faint warmth of the ember, when the cool air shifted suddenly. A subtle but unmistakable change. Shadows deepened sharply around you, swallowing the glow as if the very darkness inhaled. Your heart beat steadily in response, nerves tight with tension. A cold breath brushed your ear again, softer now, but closer, threading through you like a whispered invitation or warning. Your gaze flickered to the chamber's rear, where the stone itself appeared to breathe. Pale lines pulsed faintly beneath the surface, glowing veins twisting in cryptic patterns you had not seen before. Each rune and coil seemed alive, pulsing with an ancient energy that vibrated beneath your fingertips even without touch. The silent language of stone began to unfold in your mind's eye, a delicate tapestry woven in light and shadow, offering both promise and enigma. Slowly, you stepped farther inward. The stone walls pressed closer, their austere presence both confining and protective. You sensed the air cooling further, a chill that threaded through your bones like frost creeping beneath your skin. Your breath was a steady whisper, measured and deliberate, as if your very life depended on the careful cadence. With each step, the pulse of light seemed to quicken, drawing you deeper into the web of ancient secrets. A faint scraping echoed once more, soft and hesitant. You froze, every sense alert, the silence around you thick and patient. The darkened corners seemed to watch with quiet intensity, as if breathing with the chamber's slow rhythm. The sensation of presence pressed close, intangible but undeniable, as if something just beyond sight leaned in, observing every slow, careful move. Your fingertips slid over an intricate relief, tracing the twisted vines of stone with increasing familiarity. The texture shifted beneath your touch, rough and cracked in some places, smooth and softly worn in others. Stone ages telling tales in tactile whispers. The carvings seemed to pulse under your hand, alive with dormant memory. You imagined the countless years engraved there, a silent chorus of voices murmuring secrets buried beneath the dust. A faint warmth stirred inside you, a flicker of quiet hope amid the cold heaviness. The steady glow of the ember lured you on, a fragile beacon piercing the darkness, promising revelation if you dared to follow. Yet the shadows clung fiercely, folding and shifting as if to guard their mysteries. That slow breath returned, a hushed sound brushing again through the air, intimate, close enough to touch, but always slipping just beyond your grasp. Your hand hesitated near the chains of glowing runes, tempted to trace their serpentine paths where light met shadow. The chamber seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the smallest spark to awaken the silent depth beneath. Your pulse quickened subtly, a quiet drum echoing the slow thrum of ancient stone beneath your feet. Then, a sudden chill sliced through the air, a crisp, broken silence settling between beats of your heart. The gentle pulse at the center dimmed, flickering like a candle caught in a ghostly breeze. The vast darkness lunged inward, consuming the precious light with a hunger that felt old beyond imagining. For a heartbeat, the stone whispers faded into nothing but empty void. And in that silence, you felt it, cold, deliberate, a movement unseen and slow as shadow, stretching across the cavern. Your breath caught sharply as the chamber exhaled once more, carrying a whisper, a murmur hanging close to your ear, threading through the stillness like a promise not yet fulfilled. You turned abruptly, eyes straining through the dense gloom, searching for shape or sign. Nothing moved but the gathering darkness, and yet that feeling lingered, the unmistakable weight of something ancient stirring at the edge of sight, just beyond the fragile boundary of light. Your fingers closed around a fragment of cool stone, grounding you in this breathless moment. The pulse, the breath, the quiet presence folded back into the depths, waiting, and as the chamber fell again into hushed expectation, a single, subtle thread of glowing rune shifted, but delicate shimmer running along the ancient carvings, casting a faint, uncertain light into the black. The whispered language of stone was awakening, and you knew, without knowing how, that what slept beneath your feet was only just beginning to stir. The ember's faint glow pulsed softly in the heavy silence, a fragile beacon barely parting the shadows. Your fingers hovered just above it, trembling slightly as the cool air curled around your skin like an unseen caress. The smell of dry earth and rust mingled in your nostrils, ancient and stubborn, pressing against your lungs with each steady breath you took. Your eyes searched the darkness beyond the light, the vast cavern swallowing any hint of shape or movement, save for the wavering pulse that marked this delicate boundary between presence and oblivion. Carefully you stepped forward, every movement deliberate and slow. The gravel underfoot shifted uncertainly, each crunch fading quickly into the cavern's vast stillness. Rough stone edges reached out beneath your fingertips, cold and worn, telling their silent stories in the language of texture. The patience of this place seeped into your bones, as if the hidden rhythms of time itself pulsed faintly beneath your feet. You imagined the countless years locked away here, the secrets buried beneath layers of stone and dust, waiting to be remembered. The ember's glow brightened gradually as you drew near, casting soft contours on the worn faces of carved guardians pressed into the walls. Their features were blurred by centuries, yet their watchful eyes seemed to follow you, silent sentinels in the suffocating dark. Dust stirred lazily. With each breath you exhaled, drifting like slow-moving moths in the faint light. The stillness was thick, heavy with unspoken words and ancient vigilance. Your hand reached out hesitantly, thumb brushing the fragile warmth of the ember. Then the air shifted suddenly, the darkness tightening as if inhaling sharply. The steady beat of your heart quickened, nerves drawn taut beneath your skin. A breath, a soft exhale, swept near your ear, chilling close enough to stir the hair on your neck. An invitation or a warning? The boundary between hope and fear blurred in the whispering silence. Your gaze darted toward the chamber's far wall, where the stone seemed to pulse with secret life. Pale, glowing veins traced sprawling patterns beneath the surface, runes twisted into coils and spirals that had escaped your notice before. Their faint light rippled of the cavern itself. A strange energy hummed beneath the dust and stone, ancient and potent. The silent language of these markings teased understanding, a tapestry woven from light and shadow. Step by slow step, you advanced deeper, the enclosing walls drawing nearer, pressing their austere presence against your senses. The air grew colder still, frost weaving itself around your bones, pulling the warmth from your skin with quiet persistence. Your breath came out in steady whispers, a rhythm you clung to amid the overwhelming stillness. The heartbeat of the ember quickened, as if sensing your arrival, a fragile guide through the pulse of unseen mysteries. A delicate scratch echoed through the chamber, soft, isolated, patient. You froze, every sense sharpened against the thick hush that bore down. The shadows in the corners seemed to pulse with life, folding into themselves like slow tides of ink. The presence, intangible yet unmistakable, leaned in close, an unseen watcher collecting every measured motion. Your fingertips traced the twisted carvings, the rugged lines cold and tender beneath your touch, worn from untold ages. The relief was a whisper, a tactile voice speaking in quiet murmurs. You imagined the hands that once carved these marks, the stories they tried to bind into stone. Each curve and groove carried the weight of memory, a soft resistance against the erasure of time. The barely there warmth beneath your skin sparked a flicker of calm in the oppressive cold. The ember's glow pulsed anew, steady and inviting, a small spark of fragile hope in the vast shadow. Yet even as you reached toward it, the darkness fought back, folding in around the light like a slow-breathing shroud. That breath returned, soft, chill, sliding close yet elusive. It spoke without words, a murmured promise or a silent threat tangled in the cold air. Your hand hovered near the glowing runes, tempted to follow their sinuous paths, to trace the slow dance of light and shadow pressed into ancient stone. The chamber held its breath, waiting for a spark to awaken the buried depths. Your pulse beat alongside the slow, measured rhythm beneath your feet, a dialogue between past and present. Then, a sudden sharp chill broke the quiet, crisp, fractured. The ember flickered violently, as if caught in a ghostly wind, its light wavering on the edge of extinction. The darkness surged inward swiftly, devouring the fragile flame with ravenous appetite. Silence swallowed the chamber whole, leaving only the echo of your breath, and a heartbeat paused. In that suspended moment, you sensed it. A presence, cold and deliberate, sweeping unseen through the void. A shadow, stretching slowly, filled with patient intent. Your breath caught, the heavy air pressing against your skin like a living thing. The chamber exhaled, a measured murmur close enough to brush past your ear, threaded with promises as old as stone. You turned abruptly, eyes straining into the deep black nothingness, searching for form or flicker. Yet nothing moved except the slow, gathering darkness itself, thick and watchful, cloaking secrets yet to unfurl. Your fingers clenched a shard of cool stone, anchoring you to this fragile instant. The ember's faint pulse returned, a delicate shimmer running along the ancient carvings at the chamber's edge. It moved slowly, a silent language awakening beneath layers of dust and shadow, murmuring in a voice only the stones could remember. And in the thick silence that followed, the ground beneath you trembled, just a whisper at first, almost undetected, growing with the slow certainty of something ancient stirring far below. The faint shimmer of glowing runes lingered in the dense darkness, a fragile thread of light, barely stirring the vast silence. You stood motionless, your breath slow and deliberate, each inhale drawing in the dusty, earthy scent that seemed perpetually trapped in the cavern's stillness. The chill hung in the air like a thin veil, pressing cold fingers against your skin, making every shiver a quiet declaration of the cold, soft dominion over this ancient place. Your fingers, trembling barely at all, moved toward the subtle sliver of light, tracing the intricate patterns that coiled in graceful spirals beneath the stone's surface. The texture was surprisingly smooth, worn by the silent passage of forgotten time, yet alive beneath your touch, as if the carvings carried a hum, a mute heartbeat pulsing just out of reach. Your palm pressed lightly against the cool wall, feeling how the ancient energies seemed to thrum beneath the limestone, layered centuries deep. The faint glow pulsed gently, ebbing and flowing like breath, inviting you deeper, but whispering a caution not yet fully understood. Each movement was measured, cautious. Your shoes pressed softly against the gritty floor, the uneven gravel crunching underfoot, every step muffled and deliberate. The air around you seemed to contract, thickening like slow-moving smoke, as if the cavern itself exhaled in patient anticipation. Warmth from the ember had long since faded, replaced now by a cold so profound it seeped through the fabric of your clothes, gripping your bones with quiet persistence. A nearly imperceptible scratch echoed somewhere to your left, a soft, pulling sound like fingertips dragging across bone-dry stone. The noise was so faint that it might have been imagined, yet your muscles tightened in response, every nerve attuned to the promise of something unseen. The shadows in the corner seemed to ripple subtly, dark shapes shifting with unhurried purpose, cloaked in blackness that swallowed even your torch's lingering memory. Your heart thrummed in slow, steady beats, a rhythm syncing with the distant pulse of the glowing runes. You inched forward, fingertips grazing the rough surface of a fractured statue jutting from the chamber's wall. The cold marble was veined with centuries of dust, its smooth planes chipped but dignified, silent testimony to lives etched long ago. You marveled at the intricate craftsmanship, tracing delicate carvings where time had softened the edges like worn leather. The muted golds and umbers painted by the faint glow spoke of lives forgotten, but not erased, a tapestry woven in stone. The stillness was profound, yet beneath it, a living tension seemed to coil tight like a slow-breathing creature. The air carried a distinct metallic tang now, subtle and curling around the back of your throat, a hint of rust mixed with the mineral bite of wet stone. You breathed it in, the taste sharp and ancient, reminding you of forgotten crypts and unspoken rites. Somewhere behind the walls, deep and unreachable, a slow vibration pulsed, a heartbeat echoing faint and vast, a timeless warning. Your hand returned to the flickering glow, now brightening imperceptibly with each passing second. It carved shadows on the wall, revealing faint, ghostly faces watching, their eyes endless hollows, steeped in solemn vigilance. A delicate breeze swept through the corridor, barely felt but enough to stir the dust motes spiraling lazily in the thin air. The soft murmur of movement brushed your senses. An exhale, a whisper, pressed close yet untouchable, and for an instant, the chamber seemed to breathe alongside you. You swallowed the tight knot in your throat and took another step. The cool stone floor uneven beneath you, a patchwork of cracked tiles and scattered gravel. The air grew heavier here, thick with the musk of age and secrets half forgotten. The shadows shifted, folding into a slow dance of darkness and light as your eyes tried to pierce their depth without conviction. A faint glimmer caught your gaze, a thin, twisting filament of pale blue light threading through the carvings like an ethereal vein. Your breath caught as your hand reached toward this dreamlike glow. The cold traced at your fingers, the pulse growing stronger. A silent beckoning that tightened its grip like a soft tether. The room held its breath with you. The silence stretched taut, trembling on the edge of discovery. The slow, rasping exhale returned, closer now, brushing a cold breath against your ear. A voice without words, spoken in the language of shadow and stone. You froze, heart a slow drumbeat, senses flaring into sharp focus. The air trembled with expectation. A gentle pressure that pressed inward, making the cavern walls seem to lean nearer, whispering secrets just beyond hearing. The glow suddenly flared higher, illuminating splintered symbols carved deeply along the walls, glyphs twisting into serpentine knots and spirals that pulsed with unyielding life. A sudden, bone-deep chill swept across you, the temperature dropping so sharply it cut a thin line through. Your breath. The fragile light flickered wildly, as though caught in an unseen tempest, shadows pulling tight like a closing curtain. Darkness surged forward then, swallowing the distant glow with slow hunger, leaving your surroundings steeped in suffocating black. In that profound silence, you sensed it, the weight of a presence, waiting, patient and watchful, chilling enough to thread ice through your veins. You trembled in the hollow quiet as the cavern exhaled once more. A slow, deliberate breath, grave and secretive, brushing close enough to stir the hair at your nape. The air shifted, carrying ancient promises drenched in shadow. Whirling on instinct, your gaze ripped through the dense murk, searching for shape, for any sign beyond the darkness's unbroken veil. Yet nothing moved, only the silent gathering of shadows, thickening like ink swirling in water, cloaking truths protected by cold stone. Cold fingers curled around a jagged stone shard at your feet, a tether to reality in the growing abyss. The ember's faint pulse, a whispering thread, stirred along the rune-carved walls once more, shimmering softly with a fragile, quiet light. The whispers of stone breathed back to you, a secret awakening. Then the cavern's floor trembled slightly beneath your weight, a subtle, almost imperceptible quiver, spreading like a ripple across still water. Stones settled deep below, shifting after centuries of silence. The slow underground heartbeat quickened, thrumming beneath your feet like a vast, sleeping thing rousing from slumber. And you knew, with the shudder of that first quake, that the sleeping depths were no longer patient. Something ancient and vast had begun to stir. You stood frozen in the dense blackness, your breath steady but shallow as the chamber. Around you seemed to pulse with a silent life. The faint shimmer of glowing runes flickered faintly along the rough stone walls, casting delicate patterns of light that intertwined and curled like whispers of forgotten tales. Your fingertips lingered just above the fragile ember that hovered before you, its soft warmth a stark contrast to the biting chill that pressed cold fingers against your skin. The air felt thick with dust and secrets, with the weight of time suspended in this underground, breathless tomb. Every inhale filled your lungs with the stale scent of ancient earth, rough stone, and a faint, metallic tang, the subtle scent of rust or something far older, wrong and unmoving. A slow, rasping breath seemed to crawl beneath your skin, threading a shiver down your spine. Your feet moved almost without your will. Each step brought a quiet crunch of scattered gravel pressed reluctantly against limestone, echoes swallowed quickly by the cavern's vast, patient silence. Your hands brushed the jagged edges of fractured carvings, rough and worn, their stories almost too faint to recall, but present beneath every scratch and groove. You moved forward, pulled by the ember's gentle pulse, its glow wrapping around the shadowed figures carved into the walls, silent sentinels watching you with hollow eyes, dulled by centuries, but still vigilant. The torch was gone, but the memory of its flickering warmth clung softly to your skin, a distant, fading comfort against the creeping cold. You reached out to touch the light itself, fingers trembling, hesitating, just before the ember's heat kissed your skin. The air shifted suddenly, a subtle cooling that threaded a thin line of frost along your neck, curling slow and deliberate, like a serpent in the dark. Behind you, the shadows pressed tighter, folding inward with slow patience. The soft scrape returned, a muted sound, like nails teasing dry stone, and it tugged your senses taut, filling the heavy stillness with a patient presence. You swallowed the rising tension, grounding yourself in the rough texture of the wall beneath your palm, the cool limestone biting faintly, sharp as distant memories. The glow pulsed, beating faint like a slow heartbeat in the silence. You traced the glowing veins beneath the surface, runes twisting and spiraling in delicate filigree that seemed almost alive. Each coil and knot whispered promises you almost understood, like the language of this place, woven in stone and shadow. It was a tapestry of forgotten dreams, carefully preserved in the caverns. Cold heart. Step by step, you edged deeper. The walls narrowed, their weight closing around you like the slow breath of some sleeping beast. The atmosphere thickened, the air chilled, frost weaving a veil over your skin and stilling your breath. The ember flared gently, then faded, pulsing down to a fragile sliver of light, as if sensing the limits of your reach. A sudden scratching, soft, hesitant, rippled through the dark. You halted, muscles taut, every nerve stretched like a wire under the surface of bone. The shadows shivered, folding and unfolding in patterns too slow to grasp, alive with silent intent. The presence leaned in close, unseen but undeniable, watching from just beyond the amber glow. Your fingertips slid over the cold stone, tracing the contours of carved serpents and looping glyphs, the texture shifting beneath your touch, sometimes smooth, sometimes cracked and rough, a language written in worn depth. The carvings seemed to breathe in slow rhythm with the chamber itself, a muted chorus of stone's long-held memory speaking without voice. Hope flickered in your chest, subtle and delicate, a fragile ember mirroring the glow before you. The silent light beckoned, a tiny beacon in the consuming dark. You reached toward it once more, fingers trembling with quiet longing. The air thickened, folding heavier still. Shadows gathered at the edges of your vision, twisting in slow, deliberate motion, as if guarding the secrets that hovered just beyond your reach. The slow breath returned, a ghostly exhale, a chill whisper brushing close, threading a promise you couldn't yet name, but felt like a warning. You hesitated at the threshold of ancient power. The chamber held its breath, waiting for a spark, an awakening signal long buried. In limestone sinews, your heartbeat matched the ember's steady pulse, the slow dance of light and shadow igniting a silent conversation between past and present. Then, without warning, the air snapped cold, sharp as a blade's edge. The ember flickered wildly, caught in a phantom gust, its glow wavering on the knife's edge of extinction. The darkness lunged forward, swallowing the fragile flame with ravenous hunger. Silence clutched the chamber fiercely. Only your breath and a paused heartbeat filled the void. In that frozen moment, you sensed it, a weighty, deliberate presence slipping unseen through the shadows. A slow shadow stretching, vast and patient. Your breath caught, ice threading through your veins. The chamber exhaling again, a measured murmur, close enough to stir the hairs at your nape. You spun sharply, eyes straining through the thick gloom, searching for shape, for breath, for a fragment of light. Nothing stirred but the darkness itself, heavy and watchful, holding secrets folded tight within its stone embrace. Your fingers clenched a shard of jagged stone at your feet, grounding you in the fragile moment. The faint pulse of light returned, a glowing thread rippling along ancient carvings, a whispered language slowly waking from forgotten slumber. Beneath you, the ground shivered, a tremor barely more than a sigh, spreading like soft ripples over a still pond. The stone around you whispered in slow, deep vibrations, the vast buried heart beneath your feet stirring at last from long silence. And you understood, with a tightening breath and a slow, sinking certainty, that what lay beneath was no longer content to sleep. The cold tremor subsided, as if the ancient cavern itself sighed, letting go of decades of patient holding. The faint shimmer of glowing runes softened into a gentle pulse, a slow, steady heartbeat, like the final calm rhythm after a tempest. You stood still, breath even, anchored by the weight of stone beneath your feet, and the soft memory of warmth lingering on your skin. The presence that had pressed close, elusive as a whispered secret, seemed to retreat into the shadows, leaving behind a quiet peace that settled like dust upon the ages. The silence no longer felt suffocating, but familiar, a companion wrapped around you like a worn blanket that had sheltered countless souls before. Slowly, you turned away from the glowing wall, each step deliberate but unhurried, the crunch of gravel softened by the gathering calm. The labyrinth no longer loomed as threatening, but folded into itself, corridors curving gently, the walls less menacing, almost welcoming in their ancient embrace. Wherever the path led, you felt less like a trespasser and more like a traveler completing a long, winding journey. Your fingers brushed one last time over the rough limestone, tracing the faded carvings as if saying goodbye to friends remembered but long since silent. The twisting glyphs and the soft glow beneath the stone exchanged a silent farewell, the language of light and shadow now embedded in your own quiet breath. The chill around you gently lifted, replaced by a warmth that was neither flame nor torch, but a slow flowering of light, pulsing faintly beneath the floor. It was as if the very heart of the chamber had awakened. Then, after speaking in pulses and whispers, settled back into dormancy, changed but serene, like the gentle tide drawing back after a wave's crescendo. Ahead, the ancient wooden door stood ajar, no longer a barrier, but an invitation. Your hand rested briefly on the weathered frame, feeling the grains slick from centuries of touch. Behind that door, the sun glimpsed through cracks in the earth, casting a pale afternoon glow that softened the harshness of the day. You stepped forward, the cool stone giving way to warmer, familiar ground beneath your soles. Outside, the dry heat of the desert air greeted you softly, no longer oppressive, but embracing. The smell of sand, distant stone, and a faint whisper of forgotten winds. The maze of shadows and whispers faded with every step, until only the vast, open sky above remained, stretching wide and patient. You paused, letting the sun's warmth seep into your skin, grounding you in the present after the delicate dance with the silent past. The silence that followed was gentle now, a soft exhale of relief and understanding that the journey was complete. Whatever ancient heart pulsed beneath the stone had spoken its truth, and it was yours to carry. Looking back once, the entrance to the chamber stood quiet and still, a sealed secret resting in peace beneath the limestone. You realized the maze was not a prison, but a passage, a slow unveiling of forgotten whispers and timeless guardians. Your footsteps no longer echoed with fear, but with the soft cadence of resolution. The embers glow, once a fragile pulse in the heavy dark, now lived in your memory, a beacon of hope in silent stone. The mysterious breathings and shadows that had hinted at ancient presence were part of a great, patient waiting, a reminder that some stories settled gently into the earth so others might find their own light. You exhaled deeply, the weight of the stones lifted from your chest, the quiet hum of the runes fading into a distant lullaby. Your heartbeat slowed, syncing with the gentle rhythm of the desert outside. The slow, unhurried pulse of life beneath unchanging skies. With one last glance at the fading shadows behind you, a calm smile touched your lips. The darkness was not an end, but a rest. And now it was time to walk forward, beneath the vast, forgiving sky, light and tranquil, carrying the echo of silent old stones in your soul. The story had unfolded, its secrets revealed in whispers and flickers, and in the lingering quiet that cradled you, there was nothing left but peace, soft, deep, and final, ready to lull you into the sweetest sleep.